And I'm not going to take it from where I don't want nobody down in here. I just leave me alone.
You're looking at the possibility show, too, which is something which is deployed by the Air Force,
Yes, it's the thing lands right there by that pump. I never say a word. And he got out and talked to me. I wouldn't tell nobody. That's just the way I feel. I'm bitter and disgusted in the whole matter.
According to the United States Air Force, in following a policy which is set probably very high in the Pentagon, there are about 250 or 300 extremely incompetent airline and military pilots in this country. The airlines let them continue to fly even though they have reported UFOs.
The Air Force has been accused from time to time of hiding information about UFO. What do you have to say to that, Colonel Patrick?
Well, these charges are absolutely untrue.
We have not been hiding anything.
This is not an attack on the Air Force spokesman or the project spokesman. They are simply following orders to explain away all UFO sightings as quickly as possible when they become public and deny that UFOs really exist.
This is the Pentagon, Washington, D.C. And this man is Colonel Bill Coleman. He was Chief of Public Information for the United States Air Force from 1969 to 1974.
It was here at the Pentagon that the Defense Department first became interested in the UFO phenomenon. This occurred in the late 1940s. With reports about objects and lights seen in the sky by military personnel and others, the Air Force decided to investigate the matter anyway. There was that one possibility that these flying objects could well be foreign weapons used for test purposes and might affect our national security. The investigative branch was called Project Sign. The project had only been underway for about 2 weeks when the Mantell crash had made headlines across the nation. The staff's investigation was far from complete, but public pressure was enormous. And they were forced to come up with an answer to really quiet growing speculation that Mantell had been killed by hostile aliens in some flying saucer. That's when we decided that Mantell had chased the planet Venus. However, this was an initial finding. The Chills and Whitted case had an impact on the Air Force project. It presented the first close-up account by highly reliable witnesses. The object described led some of the staff to postulate an extraterrestrial theory. And they wrote up an estimate of the situation, which at the time was classified top secret, suggesting that the saucers were from outer space. This theory was rejected by the Air Force Chief of Staff, General Hoyt Vandenberg, and even other Project Science staff members as not having enough proof. So the extraterrestrial visitation idea was dropped for the time being.
It's been said in jest that if these UFOs are from other worlds and they wanted it to be known, all they'd have to do is land on the White House lawn. But an incredible incident, too quickly forgotten in time, took place over our Capitol. In 1952, Air Force spokesman for the Pentagon and UFOs at that time, Mr. Al Chop, relates the famous incident that stirred the Capitol, causing a request from even Fred Truman to be kept up to date on all the details.
There were radar reports of unidentified flying objects over the nation's capital. We had 3 reports. One came from Andrews Air Force Base radar control room, and 2 from the radar controls at Washington National Airport. The first sightings consisted of a number of unidentified targets picked up on radar. Then a call was placed from National to the Andrews Air Force Base flight controllers. They were apparently tracking the same targets. Then Andrews reported a visual observation of 3 objects that were apparently in the same position as those indicated by our radar sets. The target stayed on radar until about 12:30 a.m. They moved slowly at first, about 100 to 200 miles per hour. Then one of the targets sped away at a fantastic rate of speed. It moved west from Andrews toward Riverdale. The estimated speed was 7,300 miles per hour. At this time, in the tower, we had about 7 targets on the radar scope. These unidentified objects were flying all over the city. They even violated the restricted air corridors here over the White House and over the Capitol building.
General Samford headed the conference and said that he was personally satisfied that the radar scope sightings were the result of temperature inversions, which are known and account for certain blips on radar. Although this was the conclusion of the Air Force investigations, interestingly enough, the actual report begins with this opening comment: a study of the various reports regarding the subject. Radar sightings do not allow a positive and final explanation to be made. The CIA now would enter the picture by convening a panel of top scientists to examine the UFO phenomena. The CIA's concern was that recent waves of sightings might constitute a threat to our national security. The thinking was that the enemy could exploit UFOs as a decoy in the preparation for an attack on the United States. 5 outstanding scientists and various Air Force and CIA representatives were to meet on Wednesday, January 14th, 1953. Among the panel members was one associate member who was destined to have more experience with the UFO phenomena than any other American scientist to date, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, astrophysicist and head of the astronomy department of Northwestern University.
I was called into the meeting on Thursday. The panel members were seated around this table. It was a rather somber and impressive occasion, actually. I was a junior member, and I remember feeling considerably nervous and apprehensive about being in front of this powerhouse of scientists. But then for the past 4 years, I had been scientific advisor to the U.S. Air Force on this very problem. There were 2 films that were of particular interest to the panel at that time. So the panel got up from their chairs and crouched around the wall to examine the films. They asked to have the films run several times, as a matter of fact. Now, the Navy had, on the basis of their detailed analysis of the Utah films, they had concluded that the objects shown in the films could not be birds, balloons, aircraft, and so forth, but indeed that they were self-luminous, unidentified objects. Despite this conclusion, the panel rejected it and concluded that the objects were birds. They couldn't be unidentified, therefore they had to be birds. I came away from the meeting and from the room with the distinct feeling, however, that the panel had deliberately moved to debunk the whole subject and not to give it the serious scientific attention which it deserved.
It seems the CIA was to become involved in the UFO phenomena again, in a most unusual way. A series of episodes were to take place that up until the airing of this program were not public knowledge. The events were so bizarre that it's hard to conceive they happened to individuals associated with such no-nonsense organizations as the Office of Naval Intelligence and the CIA. This man is retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert Friend, U.S. Air Force, and former head of Project Blue Book. Friend, now on the management staff of Celesco Industries Incorporated, which builds and launches missiles for defense testing purposes. Friend now relates this most unusual experience.
It was 1959 when I was invited to attend a briefing in the security portion of this building. It seems a retired rear admiral had information about a woman in Upper Maine that purported to have established contact with extraterrestrial beings. 2 naval intelligence officers were sent to investigate. The naval officers met with the woman, and she went into a trance, supposedly to establish contact with the purported extraterrestrials. And then they asked her scientific and technical questions that a woman of her education could not possibly know the answers to. Yet, as the questions were put to her, she was able to answer easily with seeming telepathic help from these purported extraterrestrials. According to the report, she indicated there was an organization, OEEV, which meant Universal Association of Planets, and that organization had a project, UNZA, meaning Earth, which was being conducted. Then an unexpected turn took place. That they, the extraterrestrials, were willing to answer questions directly through him, a naval commander and intelligence officer with no prior experience in telepathic communication. He took over and attempted to write down the answers to questions put to him by his fellow naval officer.
The word traveled back quickly to Washington officials and the very skeptical CIA. Nevertheless, there was no reason to totally disbelieve the report of this highly respected Navy commander.
Questions were put to him, such as, do you favor the government, religious group, or race? And would there be a third world war? The answer to both was no. The group then asked if they could see a spaceship, and the commander, still in a trance, told them to go to the window and they would have proof. The group moved to the window where they supposedly observed a UFO. I was told that a call was made for radar confirmation. The reply came back that that particular quadrant of the area was blanked out on radar at the time. After being briefed on all of the details, I asked the commander if he would attempt to contact me. He sat for several minutes and then appeared in a deep trance with his Adam's apple moving up and down rapidly. Questions were put to him, and he answered them by printing in rather large letters using rapid but jerky motions. It wasn't at all like his natural hand. During the course of the questioning, we learned the names of some of the so-called extraterrestrials. One was Krill, C-R-L-L-L. Another, Alomar, A-L-O-M-A-R. And another, Affa, A-F-F-A, purportedly from the planet Uranus.
A case that just as well could have been written by a very imaginative science fiction writer. But here in my hand is the actual account of the incident by one of the agents present at that time. The names of 7 men present are listed here. Because of the unusual nature of the incident and at their request, their names will remain confidential.
Another reason for control of the Blue Book files was to protect the names of witnesses. To help satisfy public demand, periodic summary releases were made. We had no proof that we were indeed being visited by extraterrestrial vehicles or intelligent. However, we couldn't prove that there weren't spaceships either. It created a dilemma for the Air Force.
In 1966, an important incident takes place in Michigan. It creates enough of an uproar that President Gerald Ford would at that time call for a congressional hearing on UFOs. Here are excerpts from Ford's actual letter to the House Armed Services Committee.
The Air Force sent a consultant, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, to investigate various reports, and he dismissed all of them as products of college student pranks, or swamp gas, or an impression created by the rising crescent moon and the planet Venus. I do not agree that all of these reports can be or should be so easily explained away. I am proposing that the Science and Astronautics Committee, or the Armed Services Committee of the House, schedule hearings on the subject of UFOs and invite testimony from both the executive branch of government and some persons who claim to have seen UFOs. I think we owe it to the people to establish credibility regarding UFOs. Sincerely, Gerald R. Ford, Member of Congress.